An Apple a Day by Hyperme. Chapter 6. Elle woke up with a drool hanging out of the corner of his mouth and his notes stuck to his forehead. He cracked his neck and cursed himself for falling asleep at the desk again. He plucked a sheet of printer paper from his face and sighed. 9 weeks ago, Elle took on one of the most gruesome and bloodiest cases he's ever encountered. People last seen at nightclubs throughout Japan would mysteriously disappear and show up in abandoned warehouses the next morning, bound by their hands and feet and gagged. The victims looked like they had gone through surgery. Cuts adorned their mangled bodies, internal organs were removed and placed either on the wall, nailed there like a trophy, or placed in another part of the body where it did not belong. They were alive and awake when their surgery took place, Elle knew, for their hands and feet were covered in bruises and scratches from trying to resist against the cuts. The murders would normally occur once every 2 weeks. Week 1 through 2, a slightly overweight but still attractive young man's stomach was sloppily removed and his torso was never stitched up. He was instead stuffed with pastries from all different varieties where his stomach would be. His stomach was found in his mouth when the investigators untied his gag the next morning. Week 3 through 4, another man, a good-looking young man of 24, had his heart literally ripped from his chest and smashed upon the floor. It reminded Elle of a cheesy romance line when a girl or boy had been rejected brought to life. The man had tear tracks down his face and his right hand was held over the gaping hole in chest. His skin was dyed red from his blood. It was after this terrible murder Ella decided to take the case and met with his small investigation team for the first time, of course, via computer. Week 5 through 6 was the appearance of a young woman, a very pretty college student studying nursing. She was found in the freezer, skin blue, and had died with a nasty case of hypothermia and frostbite. She had been thrown into a tub filled with ice cubes that was located in the freezer of the warehouse. Her sliced open torso was filled with orange juice and had turned into frozen slushy from the cold. By week 7, Elle had yet to spot a single clue from under all the blood, torture, and internal organs. He was slowly being driven insane. He turned to sweets, the only thing that could keep his mind in tip-top condition no matter how much stress his mind and body was taking. That was when Watari could also handle no more and called in for Dr. Raito Yagami. Meeting the doctor did nothing except make Elle fall head over heels, which caused distractions during work. Week 7 and 8 was so simple, Elle has placed it under the category of same murderer? The girl had been kidnapped from a bar, like the others. She had been young and attractive, like the others, and was going to college to become a dentist. But this time she was simply stabbed through the heart after her lips were stitched together. The police, instructed by Elle, kept all warehouses in the district under watch and arrived just in time to see Isha sneak out of the back door. They chased him until he managed to escape 2 miles down from the warehouse. During the chase, he had tripped twice. The first time had caused him a sprained ankle and had him near limping the rest of the way until he fell again and smashed his head on the ground, leaving a concussion. About 100 yards after he had hit his head, Isha disappeared into the night. They were still unsure at that point if Isha had in fact killed the 3 previous victims or was merely copying the first's murders. Deputy Yagami had gotten a hint that Isha will be attacking the next Monday, and then they would know if he was behind the previous attacks or not. Week 9 and 10 was another male, attractive at the age of 23, who died of a terrible, brutal death. All the muscles in his legs, calves, arms, and thighs were removed, leaving large open flaps of skin barely covering the exposed bones. The man was found in a sea of blood, lumps of his muscles floating around like chunks of ice. Elle had an officer faint on scene. This proved that Isha was the man they were looking for. Week 11 and 12 involved a 24-year-old woman who studied optometry, died from blood loss and vital damage to the body. All 666 of her acupuncture points were pierced, not with a needle like one would find at a doctor's office, but with a 6-millimeter diameter drill. Before this, Isha had stitched her eyes shut. It was currently week 14. Elle looked over the notes of the murder of 2 days ago, week 13. According to the pattern, it wouldn't be until next week that another body will be found in a random warehouse. Of week 13, a good-looking man of 24 had his head cut in half, a radius of the middle of his forehead. His brain had undergone surgery. In one part, brain tissue in the temporal lobe was removed. In another, the corpus callosum was cut, and there was another slice in between the hemispheres. The last procedure wasn't complete. El deduced Isha had found it too difficult and got frustrated. He had started to make shallow cuts in the brain tissue, but ended up making them deeper than necessary. This caused Isha to tear the brain out of the skull completely and toss it in the puddle of blood. El bit his thumb, staring at the gory pictures of the mangled body with experienced senses, neither throwing up at the gruesome details nor reacting in an unprofessional manner. He looked for a clue as to which city Isha would choose next, where his nightclub of choice would be, and where would be the warehouse, but, as usual, Isha left nothing. Leaning to the right, El grabbed a plate of cookies and pulled it closer to him. He took 2 at once and shoved them in his mouth, eating as he continued to look at the picture of the young man. As he reached for the 3rd and 4th cookie, the plate was snatched away from him. El looked behind him, furious, knowing exactly who it was.
Watari, I will ask you only once to relinquish my cookies.
Watari shook his head and stayed out of striking distance from his young master.
Are you aware of the time, El?
Of course, it's
El quickly looked at the clock.
nearly 10 in the morning.
Yes.
Watari smiled at El.
Do you possibly know what today is?
El sighed, looking back at the bloody pictures.
Please do not play with me right now, Watari. Just 2 days ago, I failed to save yet another person. This case is taking a great strain on me, and honestly, time and date do not matter so much if it does not matter to the case.
Oh, well, in that case,
Watari said, placing down a bowl of cherries instead of the cookies.
I will have no choice but to call Yagami-sensei and tell him that you will not be able to make it this Tuesday.
El's body froze. Today is Tuesday?
Yes, but since Yagami-sensei has no connection to the case, it does not matter to you. I will inform him right away.
As Watari started to walk away, arms wrapped around his left leg and stopped his movements. He heard a loud crash of the computer chair falling and looked down to see El holding tightly under his leg. Watari smiled, half wishing he had seen El fly from his chair to stop him from reaching the phone.
Do you want something, Master Ryuzaki?
You are truly evil, Watari,
El said as he picked himself up off the floor.
teasing me like that. The appointment is at 11, correct? Give me 2 minutes to get dressed.
He quickly ran out of the room. Watari chuckled and popped the cherry in his mouth. He ate it with delight and grabbed another one, briefly wondering why Elle chose cookies over these cherries. The traffic was terrible this morning for reasons beyond Elle. He sat frustrated and gritting his teeth as they moved an inch every 2 minutes. What a wonderful way to start off the bet, Elle thought angrily to himself. If there was ever a moment to need sugar, it would be now. Watari pulled the limo into the parking lot 15 minutes after his appointed time. Elle jumped out of the car and rushed into the doctor's office. He ignored the nurse's giggling as he flung open the door to the examination room, breathing heavily. Raito was already there.
Hideki-san, it's so good to see you,
he greeted smugly, leaning against the cabinets.
A little late, are we? I thought you weren't going to show.
Elle quickly put on his game face and sauntered toward the doctor. He wrapped his arms around his waist and nuzzled his face into the doctor's honey-colored hair, finding he was taller once he corrected his back. Raito pushed at his chest, trying to pry him off, but Elle tightened his grip. He removed his face from the sweet-smelling hair and planted a quick peck on Raito's forehead.
Were you scared, thinking I wasn't going to show? Raito should know that I will always be here for him.
Raito pushed harder and squirmed in his arms. Let me go! After another kiss, Elle obeyed and opened his arms. Raito swiftly left the room and slammed the door. Blinking, Elle climbed onto the examination table, wondering why Raito had left so suddenly. Shrugging, Elle got to work on his newest disease. When Raito returned 10 minutes later, he shrieked at the sight of Elle! Elle sat on his knees and elbows, with his ass sticking up in the air, looking like a cat, ready to pounce. His rear was facing the doctor, and Elle turned his head around to smirk at the doctor's reaction.
Raito-sensei, I seem to have colitis. Will you check to see how severe it is?
Raito quickly slammed the door again. Elle grinned at the glimpse of a strawberry blush on the soft cheeks. He heard the nurses talking with Raito behind the closed door. "Doctor, you can't leave him. He's terribly sick. With a fake illness. He's trying to get a rise out of me, but I won't let him." "He kind of did, Raito-sensei. You're blushing terribly, and a sensible doctor wouldn't react as irrationally as you just did." "Shut up, Kiyomi-chan."
She's right, Doctor. You need to go back in there and prove yourself. You won't win the bet with ignoring him. You've got that secret weapon, remember?
"Yes, you're right, Misa-chan. Thank you." 4 seconds later, the door opened again. Raito walked in with his thinking face on. Elle took a special note of that. "So you say you think you have colitis?" he said nonchalantly, staying close to the door and most importantly, keeping his eyes away from Elle's ass. "You know what that is, don't you?" "Why, of course I do, Raito-sensei. It's inflammatory of the colon and you bleed from your ass." "Yes. The internet says that I should get it checked out by my doctor." Elle shook his butt. "I'm waiting for you, sensei." "You know," Raito said, "if you have colitis, it's not a very good idea to have sex." Yes, that may be so, Raito-sensei, but that would matter to the submissive in the relationship, and I'm no submissive. I'm a top, an aggressive top. I have never once been submissive, one of the few things I can boast about. I have never even been submissive to a traffic signal. "Remind me to never get into a car with you," Raito grumbled with a twitch of his eye. "Maybe it's not colitis you have, but proctitis. It only affects the rectum and is very common in homosexual men." But once again, Raito-sensei, I would have had to be submissive to get proctitis. As I told you before, I have never once been submissive. If you truly insist on having a rectum examination, I guess I can't refuse," Raito said a bit dramatically, his arms up as he shrugged. He opened the door and gestured for one of the nurses. He whispered in her ear. Elle couldn't hear a word from underneath the blonde's shrill giggles. She nodded and left. A second later, she appeared with the dark-haired guy. Elle felt his blood boil at the sight of the new guy smiling at Raito like a kid would a cupcake. Raito grinned back at the man and allowed him into the room. Elle reverted back to his normal sitting stance. "Hideki-san, this is Teru-kun. Teru-kun, this is Hideki Ryuga."
Else, I twitched at the familiar honorific that this man received, but he didn't.
This man, Teru, looked at Elle with the same distaste as Elle was looking at him with. They both seemed to understand each other clearly. They were both after Raito. Elle stood up, his back straight, and walked toward Teru. Standing correctly, Elle was a good few inches taller. He gave him a scrutinizing glance over, tilting his head to the side. The man had shaggy black hair that reached the bottom of his neck and thin black-rimmed glasses. He wore black slacks, a black button-down dress shirt, and a blank white tie. "You were not worthy," Elle said simply. "Excuse me?" Teru asked, pushing up his glasses. "Does Teru-san perhaps have something lodged in his ears?" "I said you were not worthy." "Says the asshole with the turkey outfit, raccoon eyes, and hair that looks as if you fell asleep next to a hairdryer. I think it is you who are not worthy," Teru snapped at him. "I prefer to think of my eyes like that of a panda. They are cuddlier than a raccoon. I think Raito-kun can be a testimony to my statement." "What?" Teru and Raito yelled. Teru opened his mouth again to speak, but Elle waved his hand as if to say discussion over a win. "Now, Raito-kun, please tell me the significance of this." He looked at Teru, trying to find a good word to describe him. "This squalid wastrel." "A squalid wastrel," Teru mocked. "Is that the best your vocabulary could come up with, Hideki-san?" "I could come up with hundreds of better insults, but I wanted to make sure your brain didn't go combust trying to understand me." "Why I gotta—" "Now is hardly the time," Raito interrupted, stepping in between the two. Teru crossed his arms over his chest and Elle stuffed his hands into his pockets. "Hideki-san, Teru-kun is my apprentice. He specializes in internal diseases." Elle narrowed his eyes. "He's not touching me." "I'm not touching him," Teru said. "What does he have?" "Colitis," Raito responded. Elle could have sworn he saw a flash of apprehension in the doctor's eyes. He must have brought this man here on purpose just to piss Elle off. "Colitis!" Teru shrieked, recoiling from Elle. "Raito-sama, you know I will do anything for you but to touch this man and that—"
That area? Dear God only know what filth is there. Out of all the causes to get colitis, I wouldn't be surprised if he caught it from doing something dirty to his own asshole.
El saw Raito's head twitch again in aggravation.
You know, Teru-san,
El said, realizing a mistake.
I do not believe you are a real doctor apprentice. If you were, you would know that there is no known cause for colitis. Therefore, you could not be surprised to find out how I caught it.
Teru opened his mouth and then closed the eyes wide. He quickly shot a desperate glance at Raito.
Now that this is all done with,
El said, jumping back onto the examination table,
could you please send him out of here, Raito-kun? I would like to continue with my appointment.
Raito shot Teru a deadly glower and shoved him out. But Raito-sama, does this still mean?
No!
Raito gritted out as he slammed the door in the man's face.
He turned around and pressed his back against the door, sighing.
After taking a second or two to recompose himself, Raito looked up into the angry eyes of El Laliat.
Would Raito-kun like to explain himself?
El demanded, seething.
Or would you like it if I came to my own conclusions?
Raito pushed himself off of the door and sat down on his wheel stool. He cradled his cheek into his palm as if he had a terrible headache.
In my self-defense, it worked out better in my head. Your self-defense is lacking. Give me the whole story before I decide to hurt someone. I knew I had to get some sort of advantage over you, and I figured what better way than your possessiveness and short-tempered personality. I had an acquaintance, Teru, pose as a fake doctor apprentice. He has an infatuation with me, as you could probably tell.
El snorted.
So he agreed easily, obviously not wanting some strange random hobo steal away his precious Raito-sama.
Raito said with an air quotes.
All I had to do was promise one date. You didn't.
El hissed.
Raito-kun would never go on a date with a man so easy. He's no challenge at all.
Raito shrugged.
It was one date. I've been on many dates, Hideki-san. Never once have I enjoyed myself. I figured what's one more boring date to add to the list. It's not like I would call him again to schedule another. As counsel now, of course, he failed me.
So you called that thing to get me all riled up? With a promised date, no less. Is Raito-kun trying to kill me?
No, of course not. I'm trying to win the bet.
Raito-kun will not win the bet if he successfully kills me. I suggest Raito-kun keeps our crazy stalkers away from him at all times, for my health and his.
Does that mean I should stay away from you as well?
The corner of Raito's mouth curved upwards.
Of course not, Raito-kun. I am not a crazy stalker. I am a patient who mysteriously catches harmful diseases and is miraculously cured only 2 seconds before walking through your door. Raito-kun is quite the exceptional doctor if he could cure me without actually having to see me, although I am very fond of seeing Raito-kun. I'm sure you are. Will Raito-kun examine me now?
El asked, flipping himself over and shaking his butt at the doctor.
You don't have colitis. Says who? Says your previous record of storming in here with fake diseases. I would like it if Raito-kun would check it out just in case. Just in case of what? Just in case I feel the need to jump you to see the inside of your asshole. Colitis is a very uncomfortable and very embarrassing disease. And that's why you're shamelessly waving your ass in the air. I feel at ease in Raito-kun's presence, for he is my first and only friend.
El was positive he saw a flicker of panic on Raito's face before it disappeared completely.
All right, I'll give you your rectum examination.
He hesitantly rose from his stool and walked toward the cabinets on the other side of the room, searching for latex gloves.
Drop your pants while I'm...
Raito's body stiffened as El's arms wrapped around his waist.
Hideki-san, I thought I told you to... You don't have to, you know.
El whispered quietly in the doctor's ear.
I don't have colitis, obviously. I just needed to know if you were willing to do this for me.
Why? El held in a sigh of relief at Raito's calm tone.
It's something I needed to know. It's a personal thing. I hope you understand, Raito-kun.
He said as he planted a kiss on the back of his neck.
I'm afraid I don't. Then maybe one day you will.
El spun Raito around in his arms and kissed him again on the lips. He sent him a lopsided smile.
Stay away from Teru-san for me, will you?
El was out of the door before Raito could call him back.